Infra-Man.
I've never touched a man before.
Tarzan the Ape Man.
The Shogun of Harlem.
The Last Dragon. What do these films have in common? Well, frankly, we're almost embarrassed to admit we like them. We call them guilty pleasures, films that have elements that we normally might scorn, like slasher films, teenage fun in the sun pictures, that kind of stuff. But we got to admit that these films did have elements that got under our skin, and they can get under yours too, because they're available on home videotape if you've got enough guts to rent them from the guy in the store. You want this? Yes, I do. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. And if anybody asks you why you wanted to rent these films, say, you don't know. Don't mention our names. My first guilty pleasure is Pee-wee's Big Adventure, a movie that came out a year ago and proved that Pee Wee Herman was more than a stand-up comedian. He represented a whole self-contained worldview. In the movie, Pee Wee lives in his own little world, which looks like the world's biggest toy department. He's an eternal optimist, and usually he's right, like here, where he wins the Tour de France bike race. But then Pee Wee loses his beloved bicycle and starts on a cross-country odyssey in search of it.
10 years ago, along the same stretch of road, in a dense fog, just like this, I saw the worst accident I ever seen. There was this sound, like a garbage truck dropped off the Empire State Building. And when they finally pulled the driver's body from the twisted, burning wreck, it looked like this.
I looked at Pee-wee's Big Adventure again the other night on video, and I was surprised all over again by how innocent, how playful, and how truly eccentric Pee Wee Herman really is. But the movie is not just a strange little man acting goofy. Pee Wee has created a whole fairy tale universe as consistent and fascinating as Alice's Wonderland or the world of the Hobbits and the Lord of the Rings. Pee Wee's Big Adventure is one of those movies like The Wizard of Oz, I think, that kids can look at in one state of mind while the grown-ups enjoy it on a completely different level. And I think people are doing that also with his Saturday morning TV show, too. Grown-ups are watching it.
Well, I tell you, I didn't like the picture when it came out. I have enjoyed this character when he's had short bits on TV talk shows.
Yeah.
I just saw him host a while ago the Joan Rivers show, and he was acceptable in that format, in short bits, but in a long film, I thought it was just much too much. The gimmicks that I saw, like the putting on the shoes at the beginning of the film and all that kind of stuff, his little bedroom and all that, just seemed to me too predictable. And the nya fights back and forth got to me. I can't recommend it.
I don't know. I think you kind of have to be in a certain state of mind to take Pee Wee Herman. And to be sure,
in the long
a feature length, there's a lot of Pee Wee Herman.
Yes,
this might be one to kind of show 10 minutes of every night as a short subject.
Go to the refrigerator.
But I had a lot
every
of fun
5 minutes.
anyway. I enjoyed it.
My first guilty pleasure is an R-rated, fun-in-the-sun love triangle called Summer Lovers, which was knocked when it first came out in 1982. And frankly, I have to admit, I gave it a few shots, too. Daryl Hannah, the mermaid from Splash, and Peter Gallagher play a couple of young American lovers who take a summer vacation in the magnificent Greek islands. And while she is uptight about the nude beaches, he runs into a free-spirited young Frenchwoman who turns him on with her body and spirit. That's Valerie Knesson as the French woman, and she's quite appealing, as is Daryl Hannah, who gives a solid performance as a scared young kid who eventually decides to play along after resenting the other woman.
I came here to simplify my life.
Why?
C'est une longue histoire. I mean, it's a long story.
I'd like to hear it.
They move in together. The man now has 2 lovers, and they all have a great time at the beach. Now, why kid myself or you any longer? The film turned me on, that's obvious. The scenery is gorgeous, and if I were in college, I'd probably take my next summer vacation in the Greek islands. How's that for a real simple movie review? Summer Lovers was directed by Randall Kleiser, who made the hits Grease and Blue Lagoon, and he sure knows how to shoot pretty pictures and pretty people. And on that basis, I liked it.
Okay, I can understand that. On the basis of a libido, sure. I like to look at Valerie Knesset, and I like to look at Daryl Hannah,
right.
And that was a turn-on.
And the Greek islands are gorgeous.
The Greek islands were a turn-on, too, of course. Not quite as much.
You got it.
Yes, okay.
You have your priorities in order.
The thing that I found wrong with this movie was it's basically a beach party movie with a lot of nudity and also a lot of psychoanalysis and anguish and tears and conflict and so forth. And I would have liked it better if they'd left out the psychoanalysis, the conflict, and,
you wanted more
had more bikinis, yes. So that's my criticism.
You mean fewer bikinis?
Okay,
because
fine.
remember, they were nude beaches.
Coming up next, the guilty pleasure, Tarzan the Ape Man, starring not Johnny Weissmuller, but Bo Derek.
Continuing our list of guilty pleasures, films we're sort of embarrassed to admit we like, my next choice is The Last Starfighter. Yes, I know it seems like another Star Wars ripoff, and when it came out in 1984, I think it was unfairly dismissed as just another space picture, but I got into this story of a poor kid living in a trailer park who is great at playing a video game called Starfighter. And when he breaks the scoring record on the machine, his neighbors cheer, the little group goes wild, and he soon gets a visit from a mysterious man, Robert Preston, driving a souped-up car.
Who are you? Centauri's the name. I invented Starfighter, which is why I'm here.
It is?
It is. We have to talk about a matter of utmost importance. Step into my office.
Eventually, the car turns into a spaceship, and the young man is taken to a planet that is under attack by a mean guy named Zur.
Zur?
Yes, Father. Your mighty frontier grows weaker by the moment.
Of course, there's a space battle, and of course the kid wins with the help of an alien creature. But what makes the film really fun is that it doesn't stop at that predictable moment. The film continues by bringing him back home. This surprised me. He comes back home in a spaceship to try to bring along the girl he loves for more adventures.
Alex. Is it you? I mean, is it really you?
That's a good kiss, and you don't know whether she's going to join him up in space. I love the great design of the picture, great hardware, nifty trailer park, and a world full of bright characters and joyful performances. It's not Star Wars, but it's very good entertainment. I'd rent this one.
Well, I enjoyed it. Kinda. I enjoyed Robert Preston's performance.
He's wonderful.
You know, We Got Trouble Right Here in the Galaxy. Basically, he's doing the Music Man in outer space.
Yes.
And the special effects were fun. This movie didn't have the spark of inspiration, the real kind of over-the-top feeling that the Star Wars pictures have had, and it was kind of disappointing for that reason. But I think for people who have seen Star Wars over and over and over again, this is a real good one to move on to.
Of all the imitators, this is the best one.
Okay, my next movie, my next guilty pleasure is Tarzan the Ape Man, the 1981 Bo Derek version, which was completely willing to answer the age-old question, what really did go on in the jungle between Tarzan and Jane? In the movie, Richard Harris plays an explorer who wants to capture the legendary ape man and bring him back to civilization as a trophy. Bo Derek is Harris's daughter, and from the moment she first lays eyes on Tarzan, it's love at first sight. There's even a certain innocence in the way she regards this handsome savage, and I like the way the movie used its jungle animals. The movie's ending is completely ridiculous as Bo is taken prisoner and Tarzan rides to the rescue, but then, you know, my favorite part of all the Tarzan movies is always when Tarzan calls on his friends, the elephants, to back him up. Tarzan the Ape Man was not a great movie. I mean, let's face it, it wasn't a great movie, but it was an entertaining movie, and Bo Derek brought a real charm to her role as the civilized schoolgirl in love with the King of the Apes. Whenever, as a kid, I went to those Tarzan movies, and later on watching them on television, I always wondered, why were Tarzan and Jane always standing around talking all the time? I mean, there must have been something more fun than that to do in the jungle, and Bo Derek has figured out what it was.
All right. Doesn't your review really come down to, I mean, you talk about the animals and everything else. I mean, you get to see Bo Derek, a lot of Bo Derek. Isn't that really why you like the
picture? Or to put it another way, Tarzan of the Apes is the Blue Lagoon with elephants. Yes.
Okay.
In other words, yes. And that's why I didn't like Summer Lovers, was that they had too much talk, and they should have just forgotten to talk, moved to the jungle, and had Tarzan as the guy.
You see Summer Lovers again, and I think you'll find that there are two beautiful women as opposed to one.
Essentially, what we're saying is almost, it's great to look at Bo Derek, and the animals were cute.
I got Greece going for me in my other one. The islands of Greece. In this, you got the jungle. I mean, we're not totally perverted. I mean, we like nature, too. Coming up next, a wild kung fu movie featuring a karate kid squaring off against comical mobsters, including a video game shop owner and a dude who calls himself the Shogun of Harlem.
The Shogun is back on the scene, and the Shogun is the master.
This is picking 4 guilty pleasures, movies on video that we're almost ashamed to admit we liked. And my next guilty pleasure is named The Entity, a 1983 movie starring Barbara Hershey in a great performance in an interesting role as a single mother who is attacked by a poltergeist. She lives a fairly ordinary life until one day a powerful, unseen presence attacks her in her own home, throwing her around and breaking up the furniture. She goes to a psychiatrist played by Ron Silver, but he doesn't believe her story. He thinks she's having hysterical hallucinations.
Do you think these things really exist in there?
I'm not stupid.
I didn't say you were stupid, but why do you think these people saw these things, huh? What do you think? Why do you think they saw them? Huh? Can you take a guess? Do you know why? Because it was a way of expressing something that was frightening to them.
Has nothing to do with me.
Wait a second, Caller, it has a lot to do with you.
It has nothing to do with me.
Oh, no, it has a lot to do with you. It has an awful lot to do with you. These ghosts and demons were only ideas, but people saw them.
Meanwhile, parapsychologists at the local university do believe her story, and they set a trap for the evil spirit, a mock-up of Hershey's house where she will be the bait and liquid hydrogen will be used to freeze the spirit in midair. Sure, the ending is a little ridiculous. I mean, how serious can you be while you're trying to freeze a poltergeist in midair with liquid hydrogen? But what impressed me about The Entity was how intelligently and powerfully it treated its real subject, which is a woman trying to convince a know-it-all expert that she is not imagining things. She really is having these experiences. After Barbara Hershey appeared in Hannah and Her Sisters, everybody said, gee, she's been a great actress all along. If they had looked at the performance in The Entity instead of just thinking of it as a horror movie, they might have figured that out a few years earlier.
The only objection I had to the film was, and I think in your light reading about and talking about, people ought to know that we see her being raped, I mean, in her fantasy or whatever is going on, and she's thrown around quite brutally, and it is quite violent and it's R-rated and properly so. This is rough stuff early on in the picture. What is interesting to me about the film is the performance by this Ron Silver as the shrink, and her scenes with him play very real. I think if they had toned down some of the violence in the film, I think it would have been much more acceptable.
Well, this film is not just an exploitation film.
No, it is not.
They really are trying to get into this conflict here between what the woman knows to be real. And in a way, if you want to look at it, the horror film symbolizes women themselves who have been assaulted and who can't get other people to believe they've really been assaulted. Often the male establishment won't believe them, and this is kind of taking that same theme and putting it into a horror film.
I'm just saying the camera really lingers on those shots. Cut a little bit out of it, and you got a terrific film. My next guilty pleasure is one of the most tightly packed pieces of movie entertainment I've seen in a long time. The title is The Last Dragon, and it delivers a comic action story about a young karate student who wants to become a Zen master, but is lacking the required inner glow, says his teacher.
Come, Leroy. Get up. What you seek is not written on the floor.
To get the glow, he finds himself in combat against 2 gangs, one led by a wild character named Shonuff, the Shogun of Harlem, who thinks nothing of interrupting a Bruce Lee movie.
I've been waiting a long time for this, Leroy. I am sick of hearing these bull Superman stories about the Wassa legendary Bruce Leroy catching bullets with his teeth.
The kid's nickname is Bruce Leroy, and he runs into a battle with an evil video game king named Eddie Arcadia, who keeps a tank full of killer piranhas in his office. Eddie's problem is that he wants to have a music video of his dumb girlfriend played on a popular TV show. The show is hosted by a beautiful video jockey played by the singer known as Vanity. From then on, it's boy meets girl and boy defends girl, followed by a battle to the finish between Bruce Leroy and the Shogun of Harlem. They both have the glow this time. I'm a sucker for glowing fingers. That, Roger, I see glowing fingers in the movie, I tend to like the movie.
You even liked E.T. for that reason, didn't you?
Exactly. Right. I enjoyed the music, just one finger. That's how much I like it. In this one, you get 20. 20 times.
10, I think.
No, 2 men, Roger. 2 men, 20. Can you imagine the ads? 20 times the entertainment value of E.T. I enjoyed the music in the film, the comedy. I enjoyed the actor known as Timac as Bruce Leroy, and Vanity is magic on the screen. A lot of people would never admit to liking a kung fu film, but this one has a sense of humor about itself and is solid entertainment. The Last Dragon.
It was a big budget movie. It was made by Barry Gordy out of Detroit, the Motown people, and Vanity is terrific in the movie.
Yep.
The problem I had with it were all of those gangsters, the Video King guys, the stereotype movie Italians that kept running in and just really basically destroying the entire pacing of the movie.
But that's a small part. This film is jam-packed with entertainment.
Not nearly small enough. Coming up next, the mutant men are in revolt and Prince's dragon mom is on the attack. Only Infra-Man can save the day.
My final guilty pleasure, a film I'm embarrassed almost to admit I like, is a film that starts out like a mad slasher movie, except it turns out to be a rubber knife. A little brother's having fun with his sister. And I don't think I've knocked any other category of film more often than slasher pictures. But this movie, The Funhouse, gets beyond that very quickly when it tells the story of 4 teenagers, 2 couples, who visit a carnival and have a lot of fun until one of the guys makes a suggestion about staying a little bit longer.
Let's spend the night.
What?
In the Funhouse.
Crazy.
Beneath the funhouse floor, they spot a troubled, disfigured boy who hides behind a Frankenstein mask, and he seeks love from a fortune teller.
Not enough.
Eventually, the bad guys who run the carnival discover the kids, and there is a chase in the funhouse itself. This picture was directed by Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame, and he's quite stylish here. I'm also a sucker for films set in carnivals. I like that film with Gary Busey a while back called Carney. They always seem so creepy, carnivals do, around the edges, and the terror is really inherent in Funhouse in its beautiful setting. Funhouse is rated R, and it's not for kids because the violence does get quite bold at the end, but I still like it. It's a worthy film, well directed.
Of course, the irony about a lot of these R-rated films is that on video, we might as well admit this, they are rented by kids, and they are seen by kids anyway.
Yeah.
And this one is not as extreme as The Entity, but it has.
No.
The thing about it is, though, it came out at the time when we had all the dead teenager movies, which essentially just consisted of a lot of teenagers being killed.
Yes.
This one was somebody who had a story that he wanted to make and a world he wanted to set it in, and that made it more interesting than most of them.
And he also has a tragic killer at the end. That poor disfigured boy under the Frankenstein mask. I mean, we feel for the guy.
Well, I felt for movie characters more deeply in my career.
Yes.
My final guilty pleasure is one of the silliest and goofiest and most ridiculous Hong Kong monster movies that has probably ever been made. It's a 1976 movie called Infra-Man, and it begins with an incredible chain of events as the civilized world is attacked by mutant men from the center of the earth. The mutants are controlled by a sadistic high priestess known as Prince's Dragon Mom.
Either surrender to me or I'll destroy all humans. I've spoken. It's all the warning you're going to get from me. You'll be destroyed.
The mutant men look like they were assembled at the local plumbing factory. They have octopus arms and they leap around squealing with alarm. To meet the threat, the scientists create Infra-Man, a superhuman combination of brains, muscles, and built-in computer chips. Then it's a showdown for control of the Earth between Infra-Man and the mutant men, with Princess Dragon Mom calling the shots. I was watching Infra-Man for the first time, I knew I was seeing some kind of berserk masterpiece. And when Prince's Dragon Mom appeared, that's such a great character name, I knew I really had something special on my hands here. This is the kind of movie that happens when the lunatics take over the studio. I have no idea how or why Infra-Man was made, but there's never been another movie like it, and that may be a good thing. This is the perfect movie to watch on one of those occasions when you don't have a single thought in your head and you like it that way.
Actually, I think there was a film similar to it called Ultraman. But anyway,
rip-off, probably.
Yeah, no, I think that one came first. But here's the point. You talked about this film for a long time. I never saw it. I screened it last night, and I must admit, it is ridiculous. And what I like about it is, first of all, the way Infra-Man gets his laser beams. I like laser beams, too. He has to go like that to shoot the laser. He just can't go like this. The other thing is, when he first comes on the screen, he always has to do 4 flips.
Yes, every time.
4 flips, first flip. Why? And then one more thing.
And when if people are shooting at you, what would you do? Run for cover or do 4 flips?
Okay, one last quote that I love from the movie.
Okay.
The guy says, 10,000 people have been killed. And the scientist says, oh. I thought that was good.
Yeah, that's a nice moment. Now let's recap each of our guilty pleasures. My choices included the wacko comedy Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Barbara Hershey in the horror movie named The Entity, the Bo Derek version of Tarzan the Ape Man, and the bizarre and goofy Hong Kong science fiction thriller Infra-Man.
For me, my guilty pleasures are Summer Lovers, 3 beautiful kids in the Greek islands, The Last Starfighter, more than just a Star Wars ripoff. Also, The Last Dragon, the kung fu comedy. And finally, The Funhouse, a genuinely scary and colorful and even a little bit tragic horror film. There, I've named them. I feel better already.
And if you feel guilty when you rent these films, you can always say, I'm just renting these for a friend who doesn't have any taste. That's it for this week. Next time we'll be back with reviews of 4 new summer movies, including 2 of the biggest, Beverly Hills Cop 2 with Eddie Murphy and Ishtar with Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. Olive oil from Spain makes chicken, seafood, and vegetables taste fantastic and has no cholesterol. What a healthy idea. Olive oil from Spain. Fly free with finesse on American Airlines. Look for details and $1.50 in coupons in your May 17th Sunday paper. Nothing less than beautiful. Nothing less than finesse. New Glade Litter Fresh. Cat lovers will love the way new Litter Fresh works to eliminate litter box odors.